so here now, as we said, in a story exclusive tonight is Patrick Bryne, the now former CEO of Overstock.com. Patrick, thank you very much for being with us tonight to talk about your story.
It's an honor to be on. There was some confusion wrapped up in that lead you just heard, folks,
okay,
but we'll unscramble it.
All right, we'll unscramble it to be sure. So, first of all, I know that you obviously you left your company today. It's a company that you built through your own, sweat and grit over all of those years. Very successful business. Your thoughts quickly about the company?
Company's in a great position. We have two sides to it. We have the retail business. We also have a network of blockchain companies that I think can change the world. And for example, something called, if you're into blockchain, there's like a killer app called Security Tokens. We got a company called T0 that is leading that. We have all these great blockchain companies, and our retail business returned to positive in the black EBITDA in the second quarter. So everything's in a great situation. I have to get away from the retail company based on what I think is going on.
Okay, so obviously you stepped away from your company, you say for the good of the company and the good of the country. You say that you got tangled up in the deep state investigation into President Trump. Tell me, how did all of this start?
Let me give you the bottom line up front. So listen, I'm a hippie. I have nothing to do with the feds. I'm a flag-waving hippie. Twice in my life I had the honor of helping them. A friend of mine named Brian Williams was murdered 17 years ago. I helped them bring the murder to justice, and I helped them fight Wall Street about 12 years ago. I was kind of a one-man Occupy Wall Street in 05, 06. The Fed showed up, and it was my honor to help them take down a couple hundred people on Wall Street. So that's that. Let me jump to the bottom line, and this I've learned is the quickest way to explain it. In 2015, 2016, they got back in touch with me for the third time, and it was I was given some fishy orders, and I carried them out thinking in 2015, 2016, thinking I was conducting law enforcement. Let me emphasize, don't say the FBI. The FBI is barely involved in this. It's all the top. The men in black, as I call them, showed up and asked for this third favor. Well, anyway, I'm not going to go into the details right now, but I didn't know who sent the orders, but I did them. They seemed fishy.
If you live in the Dayton area and you are tired of settling.
Last summer watching television, and here's the punchline, people. Last summer watching television and some congressional hearings, I figured out where those orders came from. They gave him a guy named Peter Strzok, and Bill Freestyle, Carlin, McCabe, Comey. That was who sent the orders.
Well, you're naming a bunch of FBI people there.
Well, the Peter Strzok, and it has been confirmed to me that my instructions came from Peter Strzok, that the people who carried me the orders were coming taking it on behalf. That's been confirmed.
So you had helped the government a couple of times. They reached out to you. What did they ask you to do?
I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty right now. The nitty-gritty, I can tell you the main event, and I feel terrible. I've been watching for 3 years, and our country's coming apart, and people are killing each other. And I finally went to see Buffett, and Buffett's kind of my rabbi, I call him. And he said, Patrick, you have to come forward. And I said, it's going to make some feds furious at me. Their heads are going to explode. And he said, you let feds do their job. You're a citizen. You got your job. You're coming to the public. Here's what it is. This was all political espionage conducted against Hillary Clinton, Rubio, Cruz, and Trump. This is not a theory of mine, some political theory. I was in the room when it happened, in a way. I mean, not in a way. I was part of it. I didn't know. I knew I had some of the pieces. I thought I had the pieces of something much bigger. Last summer, as stuff bubbled into the news, thanks to good journalists such as yourself, I started realizing I had these very important missing pieces. I actually started trying to help then, but I had to wait until there was a return to rule of law in our country. And I've lived in places where and that took waiting until Bill Barr got installed. And then I don't know the guy, I never shaken his hand or anything, but only then did I trust things enough. And I went to the Department of Justice and started
you told
explaining.
them what you knew. It's my understanding that I should just point this out because some people might be listening and saying, well, how credible is this? And we did some asking around, and we have basically had the indications that that there's every reason to believe that your story is indeed credible. So
I'm not in the convincing business. I'm in the business
I hear you.
The door
and obviously,
but
let me go back to the basics, because this is what everybody's saying
at
at home. This is what everyone's saying at home. What did they tell you to do? What did they ask you to do, Patrick?
There was, some of it involved this young lady, Maria Butina, who came here. So some of it involved her.
Okay.
Some of it involves setting up Hillary Clinton for what looked like law enforcement was actually setting her up to be blackmailed. I helped them set up Hillary Clinton to be blackmailed.
What was the nature of the blackmail?
Can't go into it. And so I'm sure there's a bunch of people in Washington who are going to rip me apart. And I've actually been warned. I was warned last October, from a friendly person, Patrick, if you come forward, this entire town of Washington is going to destroy you. It's going to turn you into dust.
And, I give you a lot of credit, because I know that you said that you did some soul searching over the summer, and you talked to good friends, and you mentioned one of them a moment ago. What was the name?
I was introduced to bio oil by my mother-in-law as soon as she found out I was pregnant, and
nature of your relationship with Maria Butina. Did she reach out to you, or did you reach out to her? And how involved were you? Did you have an affair with her for 3 years, or what was the nature of your relationship?
Have you seen the video? I bet you've played it, where candidate Trump is at a conference and this young girl stands up and asks her a question.
Sure.
If you go and look up that conference, which was a 2015 conference in Las Vegas, I'm a small L libertarian, a small R Republican. I don't even identify as a Republican. But I get asked to speak at sort of freedom-oriented conferences like that, and I did. And I was at that conference, and after I spoke, she actually came up to me and talked about guns. Well, and some gun rights thing in Florida, and the first time I brushed her off, I'm not into guns. I'm not. Everybody should have one, but I'm not into them. I don't fetishize them or anything like Republicans, but I often do. But then she came up the next day and said, "Listen, I'm really here. Look, I'm really here. I've been sent from Russia to make contact with you. And there's some people in Russia who want to talk to you. They know about you and your relationship with Milton Friedman. Believe it or not, there are people like this in Russia. There are liberals." Anyway, she had this whole story. I don't want to get into it here. I'll put it up on a website called Deep Capture, which is where I used to write to the world. But I'll go into I don't want to go into where in the doll did you touch her stuff. We had an intellectual relationship. I was given a green light to meet her again. She turned that into a physical relationship. I don't mean to, not that I'm unwitting, or unwell. But so we dated for about 6 months. I was trying to yenter her in to some senior foreign policy thinkers. Because of some things I used to do involving law enforcement and taking down Wall Street, I used to have a very low-level security clearance. And when you get that, you sign a piece of paper that says, when a gal comes up to you from Russia and says, "Listen, I've been sent here to make contact with you, and we want to take you to Moscow and want you to speak on Bitcoin and speak on liberalism at the central bank, and then we want other people." You have to report that. I reported that, and so that to my clearance authority, and which is kind of I talked about once every 3 years or something like that happened. And before I know it, the men in black are back in my life, and I was trying to encourage her to have a relationship. And she wanted to be a back channel for peace, and I could have opened some doors, but I didn't want to do that until I had some green light. And after a couple months, anyway, I was given the green light. That turned romantic. I was bothered. I'll tell you something I'll tell you some really deep stuff. I was 2/3 judging it as an opportunity for something good, something to move the ball of peace down the field a bit. 1/3 that it was a risk. I know she was dating or living with some Republican bigwigs and stuff. So my deal, I just said, I'm a 56-year-old bachelor. I said, you just, every 6 weeks or so, when you want to see someplace, give me a call and we'll meet there. But I was trying to yenter her in, and maybe something peaceful could happen. But I had sort of a third, maybe 2/3 I was positive, 1/3 this is quite a risk. And especially over those from July of 2015 to March of 2016, she clearly was swanking around more and more in big shot Republican circles, including people like Don Jr. I was telling her that the Men in Black about all those meetings before she had them. They knew about her the day she landed. They knew about every one of these meetings she had. They knew that at one point she was going off to have a meeting with Don Jr. I don't know. And listen, I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a never Trumper. I have this. He won fair and square, and that's.
So do you think that she was set up by the Men in Black to approach people in the Trump administration? Is that a possibility?
100%. They knew that she was trying to.
Hi there, I'm Jeff Bishop. I'm the co-founder of RagingBull.com. I'm one of the top real money
approach, and her instructions were she had to build a contact with anyone in the Hillary campaign, Rubio, Cruz, or Trump. And they knew that because she told me, and I let them know. They let it all happen. I could have told you in December of 2015, I had a suspicion forming in my mind. It was really quite strange because she had initially checked off. She doesn't like, she's Democrat. She's much more of a Republican or much more of a small L liberal. She's a Milton Friedman fan. I'm a Milton Friedman guy. So once she had checked off having met somebody in Clinton's circle, I don't know who, and she was telling me all this, she was just going to focus on Cruz, Rubio, and Trump. At that point, the interest in the United States government in doing anything about this went to zero. It became like this, even to the point I was telling them things like, look, she's telling me that in a matter of weeks, she's going to be at some conference of conservatives, and Donald Trump is going to be taken down and out the back door of his hotel and be taken to meet her and this and that. What do you want me to do? Can I let me take her off for a trip and whisk her away to the Bahamas?
Yeah.
Or what do you want? And they said, no, we're going to let it all happen. 100%.
So do you
100%.
believe
Do
you believe that she was working for them, for these men in suits in the United States, or that she was working for the Russian government? Or some combination?
No, I'm not going into that. I'm not going into that. It's not. She wasn't working for the men in suits here. Listen, here's the other main event. It's horrible to even say the initials FBI involved in this. It wasn't the FBI. The FBI got hijacked from the top. It's the top. It's entirely
well, you talked
the top.
about Comey. You talked about Brennan, Clapper. So you're talking about the CIA?
I'm talking about. I've said there's 3 officials whose names were used with me, X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to say on your show. The feds all have this. I'm sorry, the legitimate feds all have this as of April. There were 3 names used at the 3 senior officials. Right. They were behind all of this. And the FBI was out of it. The FBI, they delivered the message. And let me tell and then there was another period where then they told me to break up with her. I was stage 4 or stuff. They came back, and this time they specifically said, we need you to conduct rekindle your romantic relationship, and the orders are coming from X, Y, and Z. And they felt horrible. I want to be clear, these are men and women of honor, and I think those are illegal orders. And they made very clear to me, you do not have to take these, you do not have to help. I think they didn't want me to, but they felt terrible.
So when you say all the way up, are you talking, what do you mean? The White House? The CIA?
I think.
Or you're talking about
names.
entities that were separate from these? Like when you say it wasn't the FBI, but you say it was Peter Strzok, are you sort of carving him out as being part of a separate operation, separate from the FBI?
No. I'm just, forget Strzok for a moment. The X, Y, and Z are actual human beings whose names you know, who were in the Obama administration. Guys like Strzok and stuff are the errand boys. They're the clerks who sent the messages for some federal agents.
Is it John Brennan? Is it James Clapper? Is it Comey?
General Barr has that information, and okay. I think they're already, I'm sure, furious. I've way overstepped the lines.
All right, I understand, and I don't want you to.
They'll reveal it to you.
Okay, I'm asking questions because that's my job, and you can answer them to whatever extent you feel comfortable, and I understand that. But when you said that you realized last summer that it was Peter Strzok that had contacted you, and you've talked about having discussions about Maria Butina. What you said, did something make you uncomfortable that he asked you to do, and is that why you sort of said I'm out?
No, it didn't work that way.
Okay.
I will write up an explanation of all of this, and people can read it, so it's clear. But It was what was making me uncomfortable was two things. That I was, I had originally said, hey, this is